Hello, Internet! Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today, it's time to listen to the magic once again. It's time to discuss Magic the Gathering. Which means I am joined, as always, by our Magic the Gathering expert, Kyle Moran. Hello.
Hello, Gino. How are you?
I'm good. War of the Spark.
Yeah, it's here. Well, it's almost here, like 2 days.
Yep, about 5 years of Magic storyline.
Yeah, we're finally getting the closure. All in one card, kind of.
Yes, all in a handful of cards.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say, I think, that this set might be the most powerful set since Kaladesh, at least.
Yeah, and we've had some strong ones. The
last two sets were very good.
Yeah, they've definitely impacted Modern in their own fair share.
But I think this set will impact Modern, Legacy, Vintage, Commander.
Yeah.
Every format, I think, changes after this set.
Yeah, at the very least, I can say for Standard, I kind of have to, go back and, reevaluate what the baseline is all over again. I'm sure Sultai Midrange and Esper Control and all those decks will still be good, but they aren't, the only contender. There might be new contenders we don't even know now. So it's going to be really interesting to figure that stuff out. Yeah,
this set is... In some ways, it feels like an old Magic set because there are a lot of cards that just have strong effects, single strong effects that seem iconic for the color pairs, almost like original Ravnica. And then it's also got just a power level thrown up to 11 in a lot of places.
Yeah. No, there are so many cards I looked at. I'm like, did they just print that? Did that just happen?
Its stats did not need to be this good.
Yeah, or even just cards like this, simple they've reprinted Diabolic Edict. I'm just like, but that's just back. We haven't had that. That's not in Standard or Modern.
And this one's strictly better than Diabolic Edict.
It is, and it's relevantly better. Yeah, we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But that's the prime example. It's cards. I'm like, wow, they just brought that back in the Standard and Modern. That's just a thing that happened.
Yep. So before we get into it, just a reminder: if you want to get in touch with the show, discuss Magic stuff. You can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections. And deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. We don't have any emails for right now. So, Kyle, why don't we get started with just a little bit about War of the Spark? What is War of the Spark? What's the setup here?
Yeah, so War of the Spark is the final act on this storyline that's been going on since Kaladesh, as you said, where Nicol Bolas has been kind of bringing all his pawns together for this final... to ascend to godhood, essentially. And the way he's trying to do that, the overall gist is he's trying to get a bunch of planeswalkers on the same plane so he can cast this thing called the Elder Spell, which harvests all of the sparks of the planeswalker on the plane to fuel his ascension to godhood. And every single set since Kaladesh, if I'm not mistaken.
Before Kaladesh.
I guess Tarkir kind of too, but I feel wait, which is that what you're referring to?
Well, depending on how far back you want to go, because Liliana killing all of the different demons that have a contract on her life goes all the way back to before Innistrad, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
No, Innistrad.
Grizzlebrand was the first one, so you're right. Yes, if you want to go back to that, definitely Innistrad would be. You could go that far if you wanted to, which is before I even played Magic, which is insane, but. Yep. The idea is, but I'd say Kaladesh is probably where they started, directly being this is Bolas's thing he's doing. So every set since then has been setting up some piece of Bolas's plan in order to get to this end goal that we just described. So for example, in Kaladesh, he was able to harness the Planar Bridge, which is a giant machine. Well, it was a giant machine that's used to transport non-living matter from different planes without having a planeswalker spark, but it was stuck into Tezzeret, which worked out to his favor because that's one of his lackeys. Then we had Ixalan, where he was able to steal the Immortal Sun, which is an artifact which was created by the former Planeswalker Sphinx Azor to trap him on Ixalan, but he's like, nah, I'll just use this for my plans. Then I forgot Amonkhet, where he created a zombie army made of this ridiculous material called Lazotep, which makes them... Is it super powerful? I'm not exactly sure in the details, but he's got
he dips them in the goo, and then once he dips them in the goo, they come out all shiny and chrome. Yeah, and then they're stronger.
So we got the Planar Bridge, we got the zombie army, and we got the Immortal Sun. So it all comes together on Ravnica, where we got all the planeswalkers, which from Ral's Beacon as described in Guild's Ravnica story, if you care about that, where basically Ral said, because he was working. Well, he was like working for Bolas, but he was a double agent.
It was unwitting.
Yeah, exactly. So he sent out a beacon like, oh my gosh, the Nicol Bolas is about to finalize his endgame. You guys got to come and stop him, which actually played exactly into his plan, so he could trap him with the sun and then kill him with the army that he brings with the planar bridge. So, just like done and done, easy peasy, pretty well thought out plan, if I do say so myself.
Yep, and it worked out swimmingly. I'm sure that the storyline will work out, and he'll be a god, and then that's the end of the story.
Yeah, and then every other set will just be like, let's praise Bolas some more.
Yeah, so it's an interesting setup. Like, they've been laying the groundwork for this set for, like I said, since Innistrad, or before Innistrad. Like, in Tarkir, we got Ugin back, and he was kind of brought into the place. Yeah. So he would be here for this set. Like, a bunch of characters have been getting moved into position over the last half-decade. And it all comes together for this final set. And so this set is very unique in that it is a Planeswalker-focused set. It is the only set to be that. Most sets have, at most, like 4 Planeswalkers in them. 4 or 5 at most.
Yeah, all at Mythic.
All at Mythic, and usually they are like the faces of the set. But this set has a Planeswalker in every pack, which means that there are Planeswalkers at Uncommon for the first time ever. And this leads to very different Planeswalker designs than we've seen in the past. And the general rules are, if a Planeswalker is at Uncommon, they have 2 slots to use. And every Planeswalker in this set has at least 1 static ability. Think like an enchantment or an artifact that's just going to have this ability that affects the game. And then they will have a way to use their loyalty, but not necessarily to gain it. Uncommons will have 2 slots, 1 static, 1 minus. Rare Planeswalkers will have a static, generally a plus and a minus. And then Mythics have 4 slots. And it'll generally be a static and 3 abilities. Or 2 statics and 2 abilities.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the newest things is we've never had Planeswalkers before that have an ability that's like completely, well, not unrelated to their loyalty abilities, but like works not related at all to their loyalty ability. It just kind of happens, like an enchantment in a certain sense.
Yeah, so I think that when you evaluate these Planeswalkers, you have to evaluate them in a pretty different way than you have at Planeswalkers in the past, because every single one of them has a static ability. So they are all going to be, at worst, an enchantment with a life total. Mm-hmm. And then you have to kind of evaluate that with their minuses. So some Planeswalkers will be mostly about their static ability, and their minuses are kind of irrelevant. Some of them will be all about their minuses, and their static's kind of irrelevant. And then the best Planeswalkers will be kind of both. And then the rares will still behave a little bit like old Planeswalkers, but I don't think there are any rare Planeswalkers, except maybe Chandra, that have a quote-unquote ultimate.
Nissa kind of does, but it's not that good, so... Yeah, you can take it as you will.
They're not so pushed that you've got this big minus that as soon as you do it, the game ends. For the most part.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I'd also say that like with the uncommon Planeswalkers especially, they really are. You evaluate. They're so, even though they're like formatted the same way as Planeswalkers we've always seen, I guarantee they're going to play out so much differently. Because the thing about Planeswalkers is that every single turn you keep that Planeswalker in play up until now is you are snowballing advantage. So like if you're literally like it'll always get to a point where if you just had that Planeswalker in play for long enough, the game is over and you'd win in some spectacular fashion. But these uncommon walkers are not at all like that. Like you get some value out of them by staying in play, but it could be right just not to use your Planeswalker because you want to get more value from them later. So it's just like you kind of have like a package of value that you can expect from this thing. It's less of a snowball and more of like a saga from Dominaria, which I'd say Dominaria has did a really good job kind of like not hinting at this, but like almost kind of setting the play test for this, because I feel like the legendaries from that set and the sagas parallel the Planeswalkers in this set very much.
Yeah, and the legendaries. I would say absolutely. That this set, they've got a Planeswalker theme, so you'll get a Planeswalker in every pack. There's more legends than normal, including the Planeswalkers. There are also a bunch of legendary creatures. And there are 2 mechanics that are keyworded, at least. Amass and Proliferate. Why don't you describe Proliferate, because it's been in a set before.
Yeah. So Proliferate's a returning mechanic from was it Mirrodin Besieged, I believe, is when it was in, or it might have been Scarred. It was in the new Mirrodin block. And basically what it is proliferate. It's like when you do something, proliferate. And proliferate is whenever any counters on anything, you can add one more of that type of counter. So the easiest example here is if you have a Planeswalker with 3 loyalty counters on them and you proliferate, you can put another counter on that Planeswalker. However, there's also you can do that with it's not just Planeswalkers or creatures. It could be a +1/+1 counter. It could be a poison counter on your opponent. It's any kind of counter. If it's there and you proliferate, you can add one more to that thing. And it doesn't just mean one thing. You could put an extra count on any number of different things with a counter on them.
Yeah, and that means that this is kind of proliferates your mechanic that's going to play nicely with your Planeswalkers.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
all of those uncommon Planeswalkers who have no way to tick up loyalty, they can get some loyalty from proliferating. So, proliferate is found in blue, white, and green. And so those are kind of your colors where you're going to get extra bonuses from your +1/+1 counters and extra bonuses for your Planeswalkers. Now, the second mechanic is Amass. Amass is, it'll read Amass and then a number, and then the text is put X, whatever the Amass number is, +1/+1 counters on an army you control. If you don't control an army, create a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. So the idea here is they've got a token that represents Nicol Bolas's zombie army, kind of slowly increasing in size. If you don't have an army, you get an army of the size of your Amass number. But if you already have one, every subsequent instance of Amass you use has to grow that same army.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, sorry.
So instead, there's other mechanics where you kind of go wide with tokens. This forces you to always go tall.
Which is good and bad. I'd say most of the time it's going to be bad because you don't want to put all your figurative eggs into one basket. But sometimes when you need to go big and you see a big creature to push through. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in Limited. I would assume most of the time, though, you'd want it on your own creature. And also, little drop in. It plays
well, you have
to
put it on an army you control.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. You can't. No, it's not putting on your opponent's army. Don't worry, it's not that bad. That would be pretty terrible. And also, it plays well with proliferate. So, because it's counters, the army is always a 0/0 with counters. So, whenever you proliferate, that zombie army is always getting bigger, unless you don't want it to for some reason.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing here is that the armies, when you grow them, it makes the counters have haste functionally.
Yeah,
as long as you're putting it on an army that's already in play, you're going to be able to immediately use that power. And so that makes it a little bit in other sets, I might be a little concerned because maybe someone could put a pacifism or something, or they just bounce your zombie army.
Oh, but yeah, if there's a pacifism in this set.
There isn't.
Yeah.
So it doesn't exist, so in Limited you don't have to worry about it.
That's good.
I think that because the Amass token can get so big, and it will always make you a body if you don't have one, it doesn't have all the downsides that you would have of just putting counters on a creature or enchanting a creature or something. It's almost like Bestow in a way, but from
Theros.
From Theros.
Theros block.
Yeah. So the way Bestow worked was you'd have an enchantment creature, and you could either kind of cast it as a creature or cast it as an enchantment, as an aura, enchanting a creature you control. And if someone blew the creature out from under you, you would instead just get the creature that you were trying. The enchantment would just become a creature. So you couldn't get 2 for 1. You could always count on your aura.
Yeah, I think with the Theros, it was a little bit more tight because there are still scenarios where you get 2 for 1 and they let you resolve your Amass trigger and then they kill your guy. But the parallel's still absolutely there because they can't kill in response because then you'll just get a smaller army.
Yeah. So I think something worth also calling out is we said that there's 3 mechanics here. There's Planeswalkers, there's Amass, and Proliferate. And then there's some legendary creatures. But there's actually a bunch of secret hidden mechanics in this set. I think this set probably has the most mechanics in it since Time Spiral.
Yeah, so literally
close. But most of them, or Future Sight, but most of them are not named. So I counted in this set There's also Landfall.
Yep.
Devour.
Devour. I missed that one. But
Devouring Hydra.
Devouring Helion, of course.
Yeah. There's Battalion.
Mm.
There's Heroic.
Yep. Heroic card's really pushed, too.
The Heroic card is very good. There's something very close to Prowess, but not Prowess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there were maybe... Oh, and Awaken.
I'm going to, stick... I know it's not kind of a stretch, but I'm going to throw Miracle on that list, too.
And Ferocious.
And Ferocious. Definitely Ferocious. Absolutely Ferocious.
Yes. You know. And Morbid.
Yeah, sure, why not, while we're at it.
Yeah, almost. So there's just a bunch of cards. Oh, I forgot, there's also vehicles in here, but they're all at rare or higher, so you don't really necessarily need to worry about them. But,
and they're colored, so thank God.
Yeah. There's a bunch of mechanics going on in this set, so it's going to be one of the most complicated sets in a long time. Unfortunately, we don't have, nice color pairs to explain what every color pair is doing. I think the main takeaway is that if you're playing red, blue, black, color pairs of that, you've got the Amass effects. Those are all in Grixis colors, blue, black, red. And then if you're in white, green, blue, there's Proliferate, so you're going to get a little bit more out of your Planeswalkers and out of your +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, for sure. There's no real clear way to go about it at the very least right now. It's kind of, I feel like it's in essence limited, just kind of being itself. They're not forcing you into any one archetype, because you can definitely really make whatever work if you get good enough card quality, and the removal's definitely there, so that usually facilitates interactive gameplay.
Yeah, and blue-red spells is here, blue-white flyers is here, blue-green tempo. There's a bunch of your normal deck types. They're just a little bit War of the Spark themed. But I think one of the things I need to call out in this set for limited purposes is the removal suite.
Oh my, I've been looking at it. It's real good this time.
So the removal is outstanding in this set. It's the best I've seen in a Magic set in maybe a decade, at Common and Uncommon.
Yeah.
You've got in white at Common Divine Arrow, which will just deal 4 damage, so that's like Gideon's Reproach. You've also got at Uncommon Gideon's Triumph, which makes an opponent sacrifice a creature. You've got Law Rune Enforcer, which isn't removal, but it's a tapper. It's a 1-mana tap target creature with converted mana cost 2 or greater. So that's going to lock down a creature.
Oh, yeah.
Prison Realm, you've got an exile effect.
Gets Planeswalkers, too, which is super relevant. A lot of these effects don't.
Yep. You've got the Wanderer, who can exile 2 things.
Yeah, if you're 2 for 1 to go with Wanderer, that sounds like a blowout.
And you've got Wanderer's Strike at Common. Just 5-mana exile a creature and proliferate. For blue, you've got Crush Descent at Common, which is solid. You've got No Escape. You've got Kesmina's Transmutation. There's, I think, 2 or 3 different 3 or 2-mana burn spells in red. Black has a bunch of kill spells at 2 or 3 mana.
Yeah, no, I was going through the red and black removal. It's actually ridiculous. You got, Jaya's Greeting, which is 2 mana, deal 3 to a creature, scry 1. What? Then you have Chandra's Pyrohelix, which is instant deal 2 split among any number of targets, which is also ridiculous. You got Chandra's Triumph, which is just 3 damage for 2 mana. Then you got Bond of Passion, which is an act of treason with a shock attached to it.
You've got Heartfire.
Yeah. If your creature's about to die, just send it into the fire. And then black has got Obnix's Cruelty, which is incredible removal at Common for 3 mana at instant speed. And then there's one more black removal spell.
There's a couple. There's not just one. There's Liliana's Triumph, which is a sack effect. It's not amazing, but it's an instant speed sack effect, which we haven't seen in a while. We've got Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted. He's destroy a creature, its controller draws 2 cards, and whenever your opponent draws a card, he deals 1 damage to that player. So he can. I mean, it's not actually a 2 for 1, but
yeah, it's like a 2-1 against you kind of, but it's tempo.
It's tempo, and if you're aggressive, you're also actively killing your opponent while removing their board.
Yeah,
Sorin's Thirst.
Yep.
at common, deal 2, gain 2.
Pharika's Cure, they renamed it.
Spark Harvest.
Spark Harvest, I'm very happy to see that, because we need cheap removal for Planeswalkers.
It's strictly better Bone Spurs and in multiple ways.
Yeah.
It's black, destroy target creature or Planeswalker, and you could sacrifice a creature, or pay 3 and a black. So it can be a 5-mana kill spell, which is totally reasonable, or a 1-mana kill spell that kills creatures or Planeswalkers.
Yeah, so good. So good. Like 5 mana is like really the going rate for these. And not to mention like Bleeding Edge too. While not hard removal, it's just like a 2-for-1 almost every time. Like it's up to 1 target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and then you amass 2. So it's like a 2/2 that enters and then does -2/-2 to something, which is just great. Almost always.
So because of all of this removal we're talking about at like 1, 2, and 3 cost, stuff's going to die a lot in this format. I think that getting a board and maintaining a board is going to be pretty difficult in the face of all of this removal. And
Planeswalkers.
And the Planeswalkers. So this feels like a very attrition-heavy set. If you're not using flyers and things to get around your opponent's creatures, I think, and even if you are, a lot of your stuff is going to die. So I don't necessarily see a way for just low-to-the-ground aggro to even gain traction.
Yeah, especially with all the Planeswalkers in the set, Planeswalkers like to play more like these, as you're saying, attrition-y kind of builds. And since everybody's got Planeswalkers and there's so many of them that we have that are at our disposal, it just makes aggro decks like, I don't know. And none of the Planeswalkers are even that aggressively slanted to either.
Yeah, so there aren't many very aggressive cards with high power at low costs, but I see multiple walls and 1/4s and 0/3s. There's even a Planeswalker who makes 0/3s.
Yeah, there is.
So it really feels like this set might be one of the slower formats in recent memory, and value-oriented. A lot of cards that just give you value where they wouldn't have in the past.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot like Dominaria Limited, because that was very, like, the removal in that format was also top-notch, but there was a lot of ways you can kind of just, like, gain value and gain traction very slowly and kind of grind your opponent out. And a lot of these games just came down to who had the higher card quality in their deck, or just built their deck in a way to get that higher card quality.
Sure, but the distinction is with Dominaria, you had blue-red wizards and you had white-red equipment.
That's true.
Or auras, which were these
like
kind of all-in aggressive strategies, right? They were these tempo decks or all-in aggressive decks, and you could kill someone on like turn 4 or 5. It was possible.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I don't even see that. Like, I don't even see an all-in strategy where you just get them dead really quick.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff is really slanted towards slow, grindy attrition. Even the things that give you additional value tend to have amass triggers on them or proliferate on them. So they are kind of encouraging you to have a long game and go wide.
Yeah, no, you're right. So I guess it'll be even slower than Dominaria then, which I'm not complaining. I play Control all the time. This probably plays into my strengths. But yeah, no, it just gives us the tools to play slow at all the rarities, which is awesome. I really don't, because like the problem is if you give all like the really powerful bombs and put all the powerful stuff up in rare, you end up with something like what Fate Reforged Limited was, if you remember that.
I do.
The format was completely bomb-centric. Whoever had the biggest giant, like, flampling dragon or whatever, or big, whatever. It didn't have to be a dragon, but you get the point.
Usually it was.
It usually was. I'm looking at you, Silumgar. That card was ridiculous.
So I think with all of the removal and all of the slowdown, big-butted creatures, all the Planeswalkers who are going to give you slow, incremental advantages, you're going to want to be ready for the long game. I wouldn't say you can't build a low-to-the-ground aggro deck, but it's going to be harder than normal. You're really going to need some of the cards you open to slant in that direction. Like if you open Domri, or if you open... Domri's really the... Yeah,
I'm looking at the commons. There's not even like any aggressive beaters. There's like a 2/2 in red for 2.
Maybe Angrath at uncommon, and all your stuff has menace, and then blocks are hard.
I guess. I don't know, but Angrath even feels like you just kind of want to be defensive. I know he has menace, but like feels like Angrath is great when both players have a big board and you just want to crack in there, you know?
Yeah.
He gives all the dudes menace.
It's going to be really hard. I think is the point. There's going to be it's going to be difficult to aggro your opponent out. So watch out for all of the 2-for-1s and all of the value, because I think it's going to be attrition and grind. And unlike the last 2 sets you've been playing in, there are not these nice signposts that tell you, oh, I'm in this guild, I must continue to pick the cards in this color.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's much more wide open. There are single cards that are just devastatingly powerful and will take the game over by themselves, and you need to be aware of them. So with that in mind, let's start talking about some of those cards. So why don't we start with what we think the most powerful card for Standard will be in War of the Spark?
Oh man, that's a tough one. There's a couple that are definitely on my mind, but they fulfill very different roles in what they're doing. So it kind of depends on the direction that Standard takes. But I'm gonna have to stick with like what I like. This is gonna be a little bit personal, but I still am think this card's. I think I'll get to the point. Teferi, the new Teferi is absolutely it's so powerful in where the niche that it's able to fulfill in Standard right now, where it's a 3-mana walker that's able to come down, it's able to protect itself, it's able to draw a card, but more importantly, it's able to shut down 2 of the most powerful archetypes in Standard right now in Nexus of Fate and Esper Control, where you play this thing down and it just Wilderness Reclamation doesn't do anything anymore. It does nothing, and all the counterspells in your Esper Control player's hand are just invalidate. They do absolutely nothing. It's such a low cost of 3 mana. The fact that you're able to get that passive and just draw, and also again, even against aggro decks where you just have these where they're beating you down, the fact that if you could just bounce one of their tokens or one of their thing, if they play a History of Analia, then you follow it up with a Teferi minus on their night token, draw a card, and then the Teferi gets knocked over by something else. That's fine. Obviously, it's not the best, but you're not that mad that your 3-mana play was destroy target knight, draw a card, gain 2 or 3 life or something like that. So I think this card's gonna reevaluate how people go about building their control decks and their wilderness decks.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely going to be a real thorn in the side of those 2 decks. I personally don't see him as being that powerful, just because there are certain decks that really don't care about his static. If you're playing Gruul or something like that, just Gruul aggro or mid-range, or you're playing Sultai, a tap-out sort of deck, his static does actual nothing.
That's okay, though.
And then his +1, you really need to have sorceries in your deck, specifically sorceries. It's not like the next spell. It has to be a sorcery spell. So his +1 can, in some matchups, depending on what how your deck is constructed, that can actually do nothing too. So then you really only have his -3, which isn't bad. His -3 is always draw a card and gain some tempo because it's bouncing an artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand. But if you're going to pay 3, drop that, minus him, and then ++ and minus, I don't think that you've gotten a whole lot out of your 3-mana card.
I don't know. A double unsummon and divination for 3? That sounds pretty good to me. I don't know.
But it's over 6 turns?
It's over a long
4
stretch.
turns?
It's definitely over a long stretch. But I would argue that the plus and the minus are good in the completely different matchups. Where I mean against these aggro beat 'em down kind of decks, the plus can really excel because you can kind of let's say you here's a hypothetical play pattern where you go minus on their dude, and then you go and you draw a card, and then you go pass. They rebuild their board, then you go plus, pass, and then they go, okay, attack down your Teferi, and you're like, okay, sure, whatever. And then they play out some more stuff, then you end step board wipe them. That is that's just a kick in the shins. That's against aggro decks, any creature-based aggressive deck, that could just be GG, because then you could just untap and play the other Teferi, and then you have a Teferi on an empty board, and if you played Standard in a little while, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think he definitely has a role. It's just, for me, whether he's a sideboard card that's really good in a few matchups, or if he's a main deck card because most decks play into that, where he's good, that's what I'm waiting to see. Because I'm not entirely sure which one it is.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I will say Kaya has taught me that the bar for 3 mana for a Planeswalker, you don't, it's like it's 3-mana walkers tend to be really good. Like I know
they
it's not
do.
always the case,
But
because like you could put Dovin, he's pretty bad, but they don't need to do a whole lot. And Teferi does a lot, and he costs 3 mana.
I know, but I think that the new paradigm here, because of the static ability encompassing so much of the value, it's not like with Kaya. Eventually, if you ignore her for long enough, she'll exile a couple of your permanents, and that'll be annoying. She'll exile a lot of your graveyard, which you won't care about, but she's just gaining you life. And then eventually, she will kill you. Like, if the game goes long enough, you will discard to hand size enough time for her to eat up your graveyard and then kill you. And there is no way that this Teferi can actually end the game. It can gain a lot of value. It can just give you a couple of timing advantages. It can lock your opponent out if they have counter spells. It can lock them out of casting them. But it will never end the game.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's not a literal. Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like 3-mana walkers, even like Saheeli and cards in the past that have been niche, right? Or Saheeli, even when you were playing with Copycat, there were times where the thing that Saheeli did was tick up until you used her ult, and then that was what killed them. There's no ult here. And I think that a lot of the Planeswalkers, as a result, you have to kind of look at them a little bit. Like, my grading was always a 3-mana walker is fine, like, in almost all circumstances, because eventually they ult and they kill you, and getting to start on turn 3 is really good. But because there's only like 1 or 2 rare walkers that even have an ult, a quote-unquote ult, it's not the same paradigm. And so I think you have to evaluate them a little differently. But I think that in this case, because Teferi is so good in the matchups where he's good, I think he can maybe overcome that fact that he's not devastating. He's almost like a really good enchantment. He's almost like Blood Moon.
Yeah, no, I'd say, but like the thing is, like the thing with like the difference between that and Blood Moon is like in matchups, like let's say you're playing against like mono red aggro with blood, and you have a Blood Moon in your deck. You're like, well, okay, this does absolutely nothing. Teferi will always do something. It will never be completely dead. It might not do the exact thing you need to do and be perfect, but you won't have a dead. Teferi will never be a dead card unless you literally cannot cast it.
Yeah, so, and I just think that the value here is, like, the floor is higher than, like, Blood Moon in an aggro matchup. You've always get something out of it, but the ceiling is also lower, and the risk is pretty high, because if he doesn't line up well with his first 2 abilities, then his third ability, I wouldn't play, what is that bounce spell, Crushing Tides?
Well,
that
yeah, no, I understand
3-mana
what you're
sorcery,
saying.
bounce a creature, draw a card.
Yeah, it's a creature, but this bounce is a creature, an artifact, or an enchantment, which
That's
I think
true,
is a
but
very crucial difference.
They need to have an artifact or an enchantment. Most there are plenty of decks that don't play those.
Also, it's up to 1. So if they don't have any of them, you can still just minus it and draw a card.
That's true. It's always draw a card, so it's always going to replace itself as long as you don't plus it, and then he just gets murdered.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think pushes it over. Just the fact, like, because you're right. In some matchups, you have no target, but you can always just draw a card. Like, I'm just saying, cards with cycling have taught us they don't have to be that good. I play Hieroglyphic Illumination in Modern. They don't have to be that good.
Very true. So my pick for strongest card in the set is Liliana Dreadhorde General.
That was the other one I was thinking of. I lean towards Teferi because my personal bias, but I'm right there with you.
Yeah, so she's 4 generic black for a 6 loyalty planeswalker with whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. +1, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures. -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control. Each opponent.
Yeah, not each player.
Chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So this Liliana is the closest thing to one of the old school walkers, other than maybe Nicole Bolas, in the set. Her plus, a lot of people have said that she reminds them of Elspeth, Sun's Champion.
Absolutely.
From Theros. Her plus makes a 2/2 black zombie instead of 3 1/1s, which is good in some cases, bad in some cases. Her -4 is very similar to Elspeth's like mini Wrath effect, because each player sacrifices 2 creatures is pretty messed up when you probably don't have any creatures because you're playing a control deck. You know,
or even if you do have creatures, you draw a card. Like,
exactly. Oh yeah, and it's just draw a card. There's no like life loss or anything.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because like that's the thing. Like you're saying, like a 2/2 versus 3 1/1s. It's like it's a 2/2 that when it dies draws a card. That is a lot better than just a generic 2/2.
It is not non-token creature.
It is not
dies.
non-token.
It's anything.
Very relevantly.
And then her -9 might as well be win the game.
Yeah,
because they pick one of their lands, and that's not enough to do anything.
It's like, let's be honest. If you're minusing 9, you probably won. Like, because like if you're playing against the deck where -9 isn't relevant, that means you didn't get to -9.
Yeah,
like mono red, for example.
So I think she's pretty just disgustingly powerful.
Oh, absolutely.
She needs no help. She will murder you by herself. She's the thing you want to drop after you Kaya's Wrath. And I know you can't do it immediately after, but after you've cleared the board, if you resolve her, she almost fills the Vraska Relic Seeker position of just locking the game up.
Yeah, she also gives Esper a really strong answer to Carnage Tyrant. Just like they slam like a Carnage Tyrant if they have like a Jade Light and a Carnage Tyrant in play and just -4 Liliana, like that's gonna end the game. That's just all she wrote. And like if you do work for it, like that ability, just like that one-sided fecundity, that's extremely powerful. So like if you actually build a deck where like you want stuff dying, like I don't know what aristocrats is. Like aristocrats will probably be more aggressive than this and might not want this card, but some sort of like mid-range deck that doesn't mind if its creatures die might be able to take a really good advantage of Liliana.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think in Standard she's just going to be the end game for most. And
it's funny you say that,
considering that there's another card in this set called
Commence the End Game.
Commence the End Game, but I think Liliana is the true end game.
For what it's worth, I think a card's very powerful, but we can get to that later.
Yeah, Commence the End Game, also very powerful. It's like Torrential Gear Hulk.
Yeah, no, really. That's the parallel you draw. Like, it just always has the glimmer in your guard, but it only has the glimmer in your guard. So, you know, be that what it is.
Yep, and it can be smaller if things have gone poorly for you.
Exactly. Or bigger.
Do you have another card you want to call out? Because I feel like last time we talked about a 4/4 flying demon a lot, and he's gone on to see no relevant play. Almost.
Yeah, no, you're right. That one was a miss. Like, it looked very good on paper, but yeah, no, there's like so many cards. But I think one card that's like I think is very good, but people might not be talking about it as much is Sorin, the new Sorin. So he's 4 mana, white, black. As long as it's your turn, your dudes have life, or creatures and planeswalkers, my bad. Creatures and planeswalkers have lifelink, and his +2 is deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker, and his -X is return target creature with converted mana cost X or less from your grade to the battlefield, and it's a vampire in addition to its other types. So the thing about Sorin is it's one of those things that it makes it really hard. It makes it like really hard for your opponent to like actually fully clear your board, because like every time if you like quote unquote overextend, you can just like slam a Sorin and then they're just like super punished. And since it's a +2, Sorin's gonna like be ticking up his loyalty really, really fast. So like in an aristocrat style deck, I think Sorin is just like absolutely obscene. Because like let's say you play like your Judith or whatever, which is like so powerful, and then they kill your Judith, then you just go Sorin -3, get back Judith. And they're like, okay, I have this Judith that's really powerful I need to deal with, but I also need to get past the Judith to get to the Sorin, because if I don't deal with the Sorin, then Sorin's going to plus, and the next turn he's going to bring back Judith again. Not to mention, like, he gains 1,000,000 life against aggro, so, you know, that's there too. But
yeah,
it was
stabilizes.
But, like, it was one of those cards that, like, when I first read it, I wasn't that impressed, but I've been watching some of the Versus series, and just, like, watching Sorin being played in practice really impressed me. Really, really impressed me.
Yeah, lifelink on your turn is relevant. His +1 damage is not a lot.
It's not.
But it will pick off stuff occasionally, and if you kill a thing with Sorin or make that extra +1, you know, the difference between lava coiling something for lethal or not having any removal.
Well, it only goes to players. It only goes to players. You can't.
Oh, my bad. Well,
yeah,
I guess
it can pick off planeswalkers. That's planeswalkers. They get 1 loyalty. Like it's a fairy that just write that off.
Yeah, so he will occasionally get the finishing blow on a planeswalker. And he's gaining you a life every time you tick up, which isn't amazing, but I think, again, Kaya's taught us that incidental life gain on a planeswalker can be pretty strong.
Yep. I don't think, the -X is where the beef is.
Yeah, but that's totally where it is. He's a little bit Ajani.
Mm-hmm.
The current white Ajani.
Yeah, no, I'd say he's even better than the new white Ajani. But yeah, no, the parallel is absolutely there.
So for my second shot, I am torn because there's a bunch of very powerful multicolor cards
Oh, yeah.
That I want to call out. I don't know which one's going to be the one that breaks. I don't know whether I should go with my heart or my head.
Well, why not both?
Okay, I'm going to say Ral storms Conduit.
Oh, you think it's going to happen? You think we're going to storm off?
Well, it's either Ral or Saheeli.
Oh, yeah.
But I think Saheeli I'll save for Modern.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So Ral, he is a 4-mana Planeswalker, 2 generic, a blue and a red. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Ral Storm's Conduit deals 1 damage to target opponent or Planeswalker. He has +2, scry 1, and -2 whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So Ral is not that impressive if you just read him. But there's an infinite combo with him that will murder your opponent for many life total. So if you cast any 1-mana spell, you or your opponent, it doesn't really matter who casts it, and then if you have 2 copies of Expansion Explosion in your hand, you can use the first expansion to copy the 1-mana spell, or anything less than 4 mana. Then you use the second expansion to copy Expansion, which then you use that copy to copy Expansion. And you just keep going back and forth forever. And because Ral deals damage off of copies, not just casting spells, he'll deal infinite damage off of this loop. That's not, it's a 3-card combo, though 2 of them have to be the same card. So it's not the most consistent thing. But Expansion Explosion is just a really good card. You should probably play 4 in your Izzet decks. In most cases. Anyway.
Team of Reclamation has shown us far and wide that card is ridiculous.
Yes. So since Expansion Explosion, which we called out in our first, as our sleeper, in our first podcast on Ravnica stuff, Ral allows your 2 of your 4 copies that you were going to probably play anyway, to incidentally just murder your opponent and just have, a combo kill. But if you're not doing that, if you just minus Ral, that's totally reasonable. Like, you cast a spell, you minus Ral, cast a spell, you get 2 damage just off of casting the spell and copying it with Ral, and then you get whatever double copy of the effect was. If you cast something like Chemister's Insight, and then you minus Ral, you'll draw 4 cards, deal your opponent 2. That's completely reasonable. If you're going to do something like even, Lightning Strike, just deal 6. If you do Clarion, Deafening Clarion, deal 6 to everything, deal 2 to your opponent.
Seems pretty good.
All of the effects that you needed Expansion Explosion to kind of take advantage of in the past, now Ral kind of acts as a second copy. And he can copy anything. So if you, Explosion for 5, you can minus Ral and get another Explosion for 5. And because he starts at 4 loyalty and his plus is +2, he can get into a range where he's just constantly on the board threatening extra damage and fixing your draws. So I think that he will just be a nice inclusion in an Izzet Burn deck or an Izzet Spells deck, and potentially you might even want to go more towards Phoenix instead of Drakes because of Ral, because he likes spells so much more and is at the 4-mana slot already, so you'd be kind of glutted if you go Drakes and Phoenix and Ral. So I think he's potentially another way of going with your spells deck.
Yeah, it also plays really a lot better with the Phoenix Shell, too, because the Phoenix Shell plays a lot of stuff like, the Radical Idea, and a lot more Jumpstarty, and Goblin Electromancer. It's trying to get that critical mass of spells over the Drake's deck. The Drake's deck kind of more just trying to put the spells in your yard. It doesn't really care if it casts it, or if it uses Discovery Dispersal, or discards from Chart, of course. So, I agree. Arclight, Phoenix, and Ral seem like they will be friends. So
yeah, and I think he kind of fits the role of a Gutter Snipe, except he actually does things.
Yeah, Gutter
Snipe doesn't die to shock.
Too. Can't be playing those in Standard. Ral is a 4-mana Planeswalker. We can be playing those in Standard.
Yeah, and I think with him and some of the other cards like Saheeli and Ral's Outburst, some of these cards, they've given a nice boost to Izzet, and I'm hoping that it gets there. I mean, it's been there for the last few sets, but hopefully it's a slightly different style. We've got a true infinite combo again, And while it might be a little bit more finicky than other infinite combos, it exists, and thus must be feared.
I'm happy about that in every way. We do not need another Saheeli Felidar in Standard. Good God, that was bad.
So what do you think is the most overrated card?
The most overrated card of the entire set. Oh,
I have one picked.
I literally had one picked, then my brain just like decided to turn off. Here, let's start with yours then. I'll probably think of it in like a sec.
I marked mine with a bullet. The Elder Spell.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. It's definitely not the one I had in mind, but it fills a niche, but that's all it's ever going to do.
Yeah. So the Elder Spell is black. Destroy any number of target planeswalkers. Choose a planeswalker you control. Put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. So it is a 2-mana wrath for whatever planeswalkers you want to kill. It won't kill the ones you don't want killed. And then it will boost whatever planeswalker you want if you decide to put a planeswalker into play. Like, you can destroy your opponent's stuff and juice up your own. You can destroy your own planeswalkers to juice up one that you want to ultimate early. So it reads really powerfully. Like Shatter Spree or Fracturing Gust. Like, the big destroy all X type of permanents tend to be 4 mana at the cheapest. But the Elder Spell gets to do it for Planeswalker, which is a very powerful card type, for 2 mana. And it's not even destroy all, so it leaves you with your own. It's one-sided.
Yeah. No, it's so pushed in that regard. You could even like kill your own Planeswalkers to like boost another one of your Planeswalkers to ultimate. Like, that's like a thing that's possible.
Yep, it reads like a combo card too in that way. Like, you play a bunch of Planeswalkers, then you play Nicol Bolas, Dragon God, and then you destroy all your Planeswalkers and do the story. Just, achievement unlocked. You've done the story of this game, of this set.
You did it.
And then you ultimate Nicol Bolas, and your opponent doesn't have any legendary creatures or Planeswalkers, and they lose the game. Like, that is the dream. The problem is, if you play against a deck that doesn't have any Planeswalkers in it, and this card is in your main deck, what are you doing?
Not doing it.
What's happening here?
It's not going well.
If you line up with you. Yeah, if you line up with your control deck and you're playing the Elder Spell and you're not playing a bunch of Planeswalkers. Let's just say you're playing it just for killing Planeswalkers. You're worried about it. And then your opponent goes turn 1, Fanatical Firebrand. You just go, oh no, I have a 6-card hand. This isn't oh no.
It's even worse. I have a 6-card hand against red.
Oh, my face.
Red doesn't let you have that many dead cards before you die.
It hurts so much. Your opponent goes turn 1, Siren Storm Tamer, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
So
no, it's not. It maybe sideboard. I don't know.
I think it's a sideboard card. I think it's a good sideboard card. But the way it reads like this powerful combo card or a hoser. And I just have never seen a format where there have been enough Planeswalkers in main decks to play a card this narrow. And even if there was, the only way I can see this card fitting into a main deck is if you're playing the Planeswalker deck and you're intending to destroy your own creatures with it. And then occasionally you will get value out of it.
Yeah, but it just feels so win more. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I do like that they printed this card though, because it's an escape valve. If Planeswalkers were going to be a problem, this card makes it so that they cannot become just every place dominating Standard. Because then there'll just be a black control deck that plays this in the main deck and then it's done.
Just gets absolutely hosed. But it's just far too narrow. It's a great safety valve. I'd say we've seen stuff like this before. I feel like Deicide from Theros is like the one I can think off the top of my head, where it's like you can never ever main deck it because it's like 2 mana exile enchantment. But if the gods ever became too good, it's like you could just literally kill it and then like surgically extract it from their deck. So that's ridiculous. But
and I think that the Elder Spell right now it's pre-ordering at around $5, and I see no world in which that is reasonable.
Yeah, there are far too many powerful cards in this set for something like that to be $5. That's a bulk rare. Like, I'm sorry. I know it's Nicol Bolas' play like prime spell, but absolutely not.
So do you have you thought up your?
Yes, no, I actually did remember
card?
This is okay. So this is more of like the contextual thing. Like, okay, so the card that I chose as my most underrated card is Nicol Bolas, Dragon God. And
the most overrated card is Nicol Bolas?
Yes. And the reason, I'm not saying it isn't powerful. The card is powerful. The main problem with the card is it does absolutely nothing to address any of the systemic problems that Grixis has in Standard right now. The plain problem with Grixis right now is you don't really have much meaningful stuff to do in the early game. Like, it's just like there's Thought Erasure, and that's it. Like, it really, or like Cast Down, or like stuff that's like, it's either like Thought Eraser's great, that's like the one card, but either it's like reactive or bad. Like, those are your only early options. So like Nicol Bolas, while it's obscenely powerful, it feels like another big thing, you know? It just kind of like comes down and like does, like, Grixis has a lot of those already. So I feel like it does, and again, I'm not saying from a power standpoint, obviously this card's very, very much so, but it just, I can't see it like bringing Grixis up to the forefront. I can't see it doing it.
I would say that it is giving Grixis kind of almost a Teferi-esque 5-cost Planeswalker. Like, his +1's a 2-for-1, which is pretty gross, and his -3 gets rid of, like, destroys target planes. So for those who don't know, Nicol Bolas, Dragon God, is blue, black, 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 red. He is a 4-loyalty Planeswalker. With Nicol Bolas, Dragon God has all the loyalty abilities of all other Planeswalkers on the battlefield, which will almost never matter. Then +1, you draw a card. Each opponent exiles a card from their hand or a permanent they control. -3, destroy target creature or Planeswalker. And -8, each opponent who doesn't control a legendary creature or Planeswalker loses the game. So Nicol Bolas is giving you, in his +1, which is the most powerful ability of those, I think, by far, you're going to use his -3 when you need to, and his -8 will end the game, so that's obviously good, but it's his +1 that's taking the game over.
Yeah, of course.
He just gives you this inevitability, this intense inevitability once you resolve him. But the thing is, if you don't need to do to your mana base what Nicol Bolas asks you to do in order to play him to get that kind of inevitability. Because I think Liliana just gives that to you in the same colors without demanding you play Grixis.
Yeah, no, I'm like, if you're in Grixis, like, you play this card, totally.
Of course.
But, like, it's just not, like, what I'm, like, it's, because, like, the problem with the Grixis Color Shard and Stand right now is you are almost always behind when it comes to the late game. Your catch-up mechanisms just aren't very good, per se. So when you're dropping Nicol Bolas, a lot of the times you'll just be minusing it to kill something, then it just gets run over by everything else, or you plus, and, like, maybe if you untap with it ever, you're probably gonna win, probably. But you're just not going to untap with it very much. And the key difference, like you were talking about how Nicol Bolas is kind of like Grixis' Teferi, the difference between Nicol Bolas and Teferi is Teferi, like the ability on his +1 to untap 2 of your lands shifts the paradigm so much, because it makes it, even if you are like a little bit behind, you can use that mana in order to gain a little bit more traction to keep your Teferi in play or counter the next thing your opponent plays, which is, I think that's the reason Teferi sees play in Eternal formats. Like,
Totally.
Not even, like, and the fact that Nicol Bolas, you kind of have to go like shields down completely for a whole turn on turn 5 in order to kind of play this. I just can't see it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that Grixis just got enough from all the other stuff. Like, Enter the God Eternals is a card that's going to probably see play. It's like a 4/4 Ravenous Chupacabra in some ways.
It also gains you life.
It's two blue black. Enter the God Eternals, deals 4 damage to target creature. You gain life equal to the damage dealt that way. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard and amass 4. So it, at a minimum, is going to be 4 damage, mill 4, gain 4 life, and you get a 4/4, which is completely reasonable. And I think that is kind of your stabilizer card. It won't necessarily be Bolas.
Yes,
I think that because of that card, because of Ral's Outburst, which is a 2-for-1 that's really nice. It's 4 mana, 2 blue, red. Ral's Outburst deals 3 damage to any target, and then look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, one into your graveyard. It's just this nice 2-for-1 that's really versatile. You also have Angrath's Rampage, black-red. Choose one, target player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or a planeswalker. So you kind of get to pick which thing they have to sacrifice. That's going to be a nice early game removal spell.
Yeah.
Where's the Tyrant Scorn also?
Another
black. blue-black, destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, or return target creature to its owner's hand. So I think that they gave the support to Grixis that it needed, but I kind of agree with you that it's the problem with Nicol Bolas Dragon God isn't that he's not good enough. I think that Liliana's too good.
And like also on that where you're talking about Angrat's Rampage and Tyrant Scorn, it plays even more into the problem that I kind of illuminated earlier, where it's these reactive cards. I need a proactive play on turn 2 sometimes, and like Thought Erasure is the only option I have. I literally cannot play Angrat's Rampage or Tyrant Scorn proactively on turn 2, which means that you are always, very often, you are going to fall behind in the early game, which makes Nicol Bolas really bad. And Enter the God Eternals, that is the kind of 5-drop I'd want for a Grixis deck, because if I'm going to be behind on turn 5, I want to cast a card that kills their thing, gains me 4 life, and makes a 4/4. It's exactly what I want. So why am I playing? And then if I'm playing that, I'm playing Nicol Bolas too. That's a lot of 5-drops. So it just kind of gets very muddy.
You want to play Liliana?
I do want to play Liliana too. Liliana, yes, no, of course. Liliana is obscenely powerful. It was, again, if I didn't pick Teferi as like my fave card of the set, that was the second runner up. Yeah, it's just gonna dominate any value off that she stands in. Yeah, Liliana's great and way more flexible. So
what do you think is the most underrated card of the set?
Underrated card. Oh, dang, I had one for this too. Oh, wait. No.
I've got one.
Okay. You got one? All right, here we go. Yeah, you do it first again.
Okay, first off, most underrated card, Fibblethip the Lost.
Great choice. Wasn't my choice. Excellent choice.
1 colorless, 1 blue, Fibblethip the Lost, legendary creature, homunculus. He's a 1/1. Whenever Fibblethip the Lost enters the battlefield, draw a card. If it entered from your library or was cast from your library, draw 2 cards instead. And when he becomes the target of a spell, shuffle him into his owner's library. So he is a hard creature to kill. Just straight up.
He's Elvish Visionary in blue, at worst.
Yes, at worst he's blue Elvish Visionary. If you cheat him into play from your library using, I don't know, Vannifar,
Neoform, that mythic.
Neoform.
That green mythic that does things. I don't know what it's called. Finale of Devastation. Yeah, Finale of Devastation.
Finale of Devastation's another good one. If you use any of those effects, he is a draw 2. Stapled onto the body that you get. And he's a legendary creature. So he is a 2-mana legendary creature in blue to turn on your Mox Ambers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Fibblethip just does enough things in a bunch of different directions that he might see some play. And if you're going to be playing a Mox Amber deck, which I think we now have enough legendary creatures and spells that I think you can do it, I think you're going to want to be base blue for Fibblethip.
Oh yeah, Mox Amber and Fibblethip. If they are going in the same day. If you're playing Mox Amber, you are playing Fibblethip. It is like the best cheap legendary we have access to, I think by a long margin.
Yes, it's him. I think you get Psy, you probably get Saheeli in there, and then that might be all the creatures you're playing, and then you're just playing a bunch of artifacts and stuff from there. But I think, or you could just use the mana, because Mox Amber just makes you mana.
Yeah.
But I think that Fibblethip will be a perfectly reasonable card to just play. I think the decks that do searching will want him in their deck just to be a draw 2 that you can fetch. And then occasionally he will just be completely reasonable to play, have chump block, and die.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the thing is also with those like Vannifari lists you're talking about, I've seen a lot of people try and brew around her, and the main problem I see a lot of the time is they don't have enough expendable creatures in their deck. So not only is Fibblethip great to get, but he's awesome sack fodder to Vannifar. Just pop him off, get a 3-drop, awesome, love it.
Mana neutral, card neutral.
Card neutral. That's what you want to see. Like turn my useless 1/1, and the fact that it's so small and weak also plays in its favor with it being legendary, because like you'll probably get like chumped off or like killed off in some like incidental fashion, so that you most likely will not get a bunch of Fibblethip stuck in your hand.
Yeah, or target him with a spell.
Yeah, he'll go away. He will go bye-bye.
So what is your underrated card?
No, I have it right now. So I have this is like a card I have been doing a lot of brainstorming on, and I'm not going to say definitively whether or not it's going to get there, but the power level is so high, I cannot, I think it's, perfect for under. I think Fiddle is really good, but I think this is also really good. So I'm talking about Bolas's Citadel. So for people who don't know, it's 3 and a black for, 6-mana artifact. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may play the top card of your library, and if you cast a spell this way, you, instead of paying for its mana cost, you pay life equal to its converted mana cost. So this is so I've been thinking of a couple ways to do this, but I'm thinking this is this can just you can just play this if you build your deck in a certain way. You can play this and then just win the game. The game it's like a one-stop shop combo engine. And the way I've been thinking about making this, I'm not sure if it's going to work. I got to keep saying that, but the way I was thinking of trying to make it work is if you can pack your deck full of instants that gain life, for example, Revitalize is one that sees a lot of play. There's a Ritual Rejuvenation. There's a new one from the set that with Gideon hugging his friends. It's a Heartwarming Redemption. You fill what you can do is if you have and there's also other instants that don't gain you life directly, but they have a mode that gains you life. For example, you have Depose Deploy. You have there's the Orzhov one that's a cremate that draws you a card on the front side, and it's Consecrate Consume. That's what it's called. So you have Consecrate. So you have all these cards that kind of incidentally gain you life, and you can also throw Moment of Craving in there. You get the point.
Oath of Kaya.
Oath of Kaya, but importantly is I'm saying all these cards are instant in some way. So what you can do is when you're getting started, if you have an instant on top of your deck, you can cast that instant, and if there's another instant under that instant, you can then, with that instant on the stack, cast that instant. And then, since you have these cards like Revitalize and Ritual of Rejuvenation, this kind of gives you whiff protection in a certain sense. Where let's say for example, I play Bolas Citadel, I see I have a Revitalize on top, yay, lucky me. I cast the Revitalize, and then I see there's a Ritual of Rejuvenation under that, so I cast the Ritual of Rejuvenation. But it's now I see there's a land, so I'm okay, now I let the Revitalize draw this useless land, and now I get another look at another spell, and if I fill my deck full of instants, that means I can immediately cast that spell again. So it's you can kind of just, if you build your deck in a way where you can cast all your stuff as if it has flash or with instant, you can kind of just churn through your entire deck almost. And with Heartwarming, and I didn't think this was going to be good, but with specifically Heartwarming Redemption, once you hit one of those, you take all of those bricks that you had in your hand and you replace them with gas, and you gain life, which is awesome. So I don't know if it's going to work, but I think the engine of kind of just gaining life in the early game with your instants and keeping yourself above water, and then late game, and then just turn 6 comes, you slam this down, throw your deck onto the table, and then win the game. I think that could be a thing.
So my question is, how do you kill them?
So there's a couple ways you can go about doing that. There's Depose Deploy, which you can make a bunch of Thoptery boys, or there's the better one there's Commence the End Game, which you just make a really, really, really big zombie because you're drawing an obscene amount of cards, which it costs a lot of life, so you probably wouldn't do that. Or you could just use the new Jace, which you draw so many cards, you put that Jace into play. Hopefully you can sneak it in while you're trying to combo off. But the idea is you have your instants also do stuff. So even if you don't literally win the game on the spot, you have either so many cards in hand, your life total is so high since all the cards you've been casting have been gaining you life too, or you create such a board presence that even if the combo doesn't lead to you literally winning the game, then you put yourself in such an awesome position that even if they dealt with the Citadel right away, you gain so much value from it that it doesn't matter.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's, if it wasn't 6 mana.
6 mana is a lot. 6 mana is a lot.
I would feel better about it, but I think that it's definitely got the most broken potential. It screams to me like Lich's Mastery.
Yeah, but I think this card's a lot better than Lich's Mastery for what it's worth.
Yeah, because you get to cast the cards for free.
Yep.
Lich's Mastery, you ended up mana capped. This one you are not.
You just when because this card breaks the mana, breaks mana restrictions and card restrictions, so it's just it feels like it's so close, So, and I'm not saying it's gonna get there, but I would not. That is definitely going to be the first deck I test when War of the Spark comes out in a couple days on Magic Arena.
Sure. So why don't we turn our eyes to Eternal formats. What do you think is the best card for Eternal formats?
Well, I know what I'm adding to my deck. I play blue-white control in Modern, and I am psyched to add, I don't know if it's going to be 3 or 4 copies, but some Dovin's Vetoes are coming into my deck. It's, for people who don't know, Dovin's Veto, white-blue, can't be countered, and counter a target and it's a negate. It's counter target non-creature spell, but it cannot be countered. This is such a big deal for control decks, because like effects like this are always good, where like you're not even like paying more for the negate. You're just getting like that same effect of negate. But instead now you're just like you're able to answer your opponent's card literally no matter what. So like if your opponent casts a Teferi, then you cast Domin's Veto on that Teferi or Jace or whatever. The fight's over. You win. Like that's it. You trade it up. Your opponent cannot do anything about the fact that their Teferi or Jace is about to go into the graveyard. And also against like decks like Storm and decks like Ad Nauseam, you just, or even Arclight Phoenix, like they have a lot of like where they bring in their counters post board. You just have this way of stopping whatever they're trying to do, and they have no say about about it. It just happens.
They're stuck.
They're stuck, and you are paying nothing for this effect. It is still 2 mana. It's like they didn't even like if it was 3 mana, obviously it wouldn't be playable. And like I get, yes, you have to be white and blue, but like in blue-white control in Modern, your mana is already so rock solid. It's like it's a cost.
Yeah, it's almost a strict upgrade for you.
Yeah, no, I am cutting all I'm no longer playing Negate in Modern. This card, because not to mention, if you're ever in a control mirror and you're running Negates and your opponent's running Vetoes, you just lose the game. You just can't win because none of your spells resolve.
For me, my big shout out for Eternal formats is Blast Zone.
Oh, Blast Zone, yeah.
Because Blast Zone's gross. It's a land it enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. It not tapped. It just enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it. So it taps for colorless. So it's not great at mana fixing. You can pay XX and tap it to put X charge counters on Blast Zone. And then you can pay 3, tap, sacrifice Blast Zone, destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. So, Blast Zone gives every color access to mass removal of all permanent types.
Yeah, they gave Ratchet Bomb on land.
Even better than Ratchet Bomb in some ways, because you have to tick Ratchet Bomb up slowly. Blast Zone, if you got the mana, you can put it on whichever number you need, and then the next turn you can explode it. This is obviously going to go in Urza's, just any Tron deck. I think it's immediately getting added. I think that you can add it to... I think any deck that has problems with humans, has problems with spirits, has problems with mass token decks. If you can get rid of the counter somehow, you can deal with mass tokens. It's definitely going to go into lands in Legacy. It just gives you access to a sweeper to colors that shouldn't have a sweeper.
Yeah, and even color, like I like that, even in colors that do have a sweeper. This is something that Blue-White also is highly interested in. Just having a land that can incidentally just wipe out permanents, or like either one or many permanents that are your opponent's spells. Absolutely obscene. I don't know how they made this card.
Yeah, well, and it's uncounterable. So, like, if you play this, if you get this in under Lantern, like, you could just blow up all the Lantern pieces.
Yeah, like, wow, it is just ridiculous how good that card is. Yeah, I think that's in Standard, too. Like,
yeah, I mean, if your opponent's locking you out with Ensnaring Bridge, just tick Blast Zone up, and now they're not.
Oh, man.
In Standard, I think it's going to be completely reasonable. The only thing that stops it is that, like, monocolored decks kind of can't play it because they all play triple red and triple blue and triple green. Like, they play these triple colored cards, so you'd really need to make a concession. So I think it's mostly going to be at home in 2-colored decks. But in those decks, like, if you're playing Dimir and you're playing with Diviner of Souls, is that what it's called? Soul Diviner. Soul Diviner?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the one. That
blue-black, tap, remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker you control, draw a card. So you can use Soul Diviner to tick this thing down to 0 and then just wrath all tokens.
Wow. Yeah, no, this card's one of those cards I feel like I'd see on Custom Magic, and I'd be like, yeah, this is too good for Standard. I don't know what you're thinking, but
yeah,
they just printed it. They did it. I guess Wizards must know better, but yeah.
And the other one that I think that is definitely going to see a lot of Eternal play is Karn the Great Creator. in sideboards at the very least, because he's 4 mana, 4 generic, activated abilities for a 5 mana, 5 loyalty planeswalker. Activated abilities of artifacts your opponents control cannot be activated and then his +1 is until your next turn, up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost. And then -2, you may choose an artifact card you own from outside the game or in exile. Reveal that card and put it into your hand. So Karn the Great Creator gives every deck access to Stony Silence, which is a very powerful Modern sideboard card that is one of the reasons why people play white at all in Modern. Mm-hmm. And Karn gives every deck, and including decks that are artifact decks, access to Stony Silence, because it's only your opponent's activated abilities of artifacts. So he just allows you to lock your opponent out. If you can get big mana in any way, like Karn is great. If you can accelerate him out against an artifact-themed deck like Lantern or even Urza, like Tron decks, because then they can't use their expedition maps. Getting him down early is gross. And then you can also use his plus to just execute your opponent's artifact lands.
Yeah, like Darksteel Citadel ain't that indestructible.
Or their Moxen.
Yeah, no, you're right. Also, I think this Karn's going to be very, very, very much at home in that prison deck you were talking about earlier, with like Ensnaring Bridge and all that stuff, because let's say, like, you can, like, use Karn, like, normally to, like, plus, like, you know, get, like, a beater in there if you really need that, or minus to, like, look for a special artifact. But there's a little combo. If you put a Mycosith Lattice in your sideboard, you can just grab that from your sideboard, play it, and then your opponent can't use their lands anymore.
Yeah, because it doesn't say, like, mana, it doesn't exempt mana abilities like so many cards do. So you're... Tapping for mana is an activated ability.
So it's like a 2-card combo, but it tutors for the other piece, and you don't even have to play the other piece in your deck, so it's kind of just a 1-card combo?
Yeah, I heard that one on Pro Points podcast, but that was Paulo Vitor Damaderosa pointed that one out. I just love the idea of just one slot in your... All you need is one slot in your sideboard, and as long as you're playing Karn, you just can lock your opponent out of the game.
Oh, it gives. I think it really helps the prison decks. It gives them that an inevitability. Because the thing with prisons, like, you never really like they still have like some outs. You could like maybe like free yourself from the lock. Once you get the Lattice and Karn in play, the game is over. They can't win. There's nothing they can do.
Yeah, and you can also just like with Karn, if you're playing something like Serum Powder, you can just use the -2 to just grab artifacts that you've exiled using Serum Powder.
Yep. Or if you just get
turn it into a second hand.
Yep. No, you're right. And, like, also just being able to grab an Ensnaring Bridge from your sideboard, too, like, in these prison decks, like, when you're just getting beat down, giving you more copies of your best defensive tool, really good. I think it's going to be... I don't know where else you'll see play besides the prison decks, but I think it's going to be... It might bring prison decks to the forefront of Modern.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Legacy as well, and even in Vintage, because executing Moxen is a real thing.
Yeah, I think I like its chances in Vintage more than Legacy, just because, like, Vintage has the ridiculous mana that's really, really, really unfair, and it also executes the ridiculous mana that's really, really unfair. So
yeah, and it shuts off all of the
it also
ridiculous
shuts down
mana.
That's really,
so you
really
don't even need to kill them.
Yeah.
So you just go turn 0 land, Mox, or land Lotus. Karn game
set and match.
Your Lotus does nothing.
Yeah, this guy, he's probably going to see play. Yeah, I think almost certainly Vintage play, but I don't know. I can't see Legacy. I don't think it's good enough for Legacy, but definitely Vintage.
But I think that he, even in like Standard, in an artifact deck, he could potentially see play as a way to tutor things like the Immortal Sun, though the Immortal Sun with plus him is kind of a non-bow. But because he's got a static ability, it's not like he's completely shut down if you have the Immortal Sun in play.
No, I also read about a really fun combo you can do if you have Tezzeret in play with enough artifacts. Like, I think it's like 4 or 5. No, it's like 5. If you have 5 artifacts and a Tezzeret in play, the new Tezzeret that gives everything affinity for artifacts, you can play Karn minus get a Guardians of Koilos from your hand. Then that bounces the Karn to your hand, and you do it again. And if you have Sai in play as well, you make literally like a quintillion 1/1 Thopters. But even if you don't, you get 4/4/4s. and then you can get a Meteor Golem and put that into play too, and knock out your opponent's best non-land permanent.
Yeah, so there are some wonky things you can do with him. I don't know if he'll get there in Standard, but I think that he's at least powerful enough to look at.
Yeah, I was also considering him at some point for the Bolas Citadel deck, because you can get Bolas Citadel. So, it's a thing. I don't know, it probably won't, it almost certainly won't be there, but, it's something to think about.
Yeah, so why don't we wrap up by just shouting out, we've been talking a lot about the rares and mythics. Why don't we shout out one uncommon that you think, because I think that the uncommons in this set are also unreasonably powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't we shout out one uncommon that we think we'll see play in definitely Standard and potentially more? Like, just one that you want to shout out.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think the one that comes to mind for me, at least, is just, I'm not sure where it's going to see play exactly, but I think we got to, like the Elephant Root with D-Spark. Like, it's, if people know, white-black, exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. We haven't really seen, like, it's also instant, very important. We haven't seen this kind of, like, modular removal since, like, I don't know, like, Alara with, like, Celestial Purge and stuff like that, where just, like, we're against the stuff that you want to kill, it does it so cleanly and so efficiently that I'm not exactly sure where it's going to see play in, like, Standard, Modern, even Legacy. Maybe not Legacy. Actually, yeah, I could see it in Legacy against, like, getting opposing Jaces.
Yeah, it's Jaces and Delve cards.
Yep.
It gets all of them.
Yeah. So I think the card's just, like, so flexible and modular in that sense that it's not clear exactly where it's going to be, but it's just one of those options that if you're playing white and black, you always have to consider.
Yeah. For me, I think it's Saheeli Sublime Artificer.
Yeah, you've definitely...
I've been mentioning it, but I'll actually talk about it now.
Sure.
It's one hybrid red-blue for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token, and then -2 copy target artifact you control becomes a copy of another target artifact or creature you control until end of turn, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. I think she's great in a Spells Matter deck. Something like, is it Drake's? I think... Honestly, her and Ral kind of pull in opposite directions because Ral wants to be in a more spell-focused deck with Phoenixes, and I think Saheeli wants to be in a spell-focused deck with Drakes because with Saheeli, you're getting a ton of 1/1 servos that would just love to be an X0 Drake.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. But I think it'll be a very powerful addition to Is It Drake's if that deck turns out to be good.
Yeah, and I think that she could see Modern and Legacy play as well because she's a young Pyromancer that's not vulnerable to the same things young Pyromancer is. So it's potentially good enough just for the static ability because it's harder to kill Planeswalkers in some of these formats that creatures are less prevalent in.
Yeah, and 5 loyalty is formidable. Like, a lot of time you can't just knock that out of right away at 5 loyalty on turn 3. And if you can untap with this, even with 1 loyalty, it's still going to do the vast majority of what you want it to do.
Exactly. You can't just bolt her.
Yeah,
You're going to need actual removal, or you're going to need to counter her. But once she's in play, she goes out of control exactly the same way young Pyromancer does. Yeah. She has a slightly slower clock, but in exchange, she doesn't die to shock.
Yeah, no, they're definitely not, I don't think either card's better than the other. Also, like, because Healy triggering off all non-creature spells is nice.
Exactly. So you can also go ham with just, like, Moxen and other things like that, of Planeswalkers, but probably not Planeswalkers in Modern Legacy.
But yeah, no, I don't think either card's better than the other because they both because being a creature is like kind of like good and bad, and also costing 1 less is like a thing to talk about. Totally. But I think having the option between two, and also like the little throw in Legacy, this is a blue card, you can pitch the Force of Will, so that obviously makes it better than if it wasn't. So yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see which one kind of prevails in which decks, because I do think that like different decks will want like Saheeli versus young Pyromancer. So. We'll see.
Yeah, but I am super excited about this set. It's one of the strongest sets in recent memory. It feels like an older set in a lot of ways. There's a lot of cards that are just really elegant that have effects that I haven't, like, I just felt like this card should exist already. Like Leyline Prowler, Death Touch Lifelink, tap to add mana. Or what was the vampire?
Which
Rohawk? The one black-green uncommon 2/3, Death Touch, Lifelink, tap, add 1 mana of any color.
Oh, yeah. No, I know what card you're talking about.
Vampire Nighthawk.
Vampire Nighthawk. Leyline Prowler, I believe is the official name.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that card's...
Dovin's Veto, Death Sprout, like D-Spark. All of these effects that are just really elegant. Like, they feel like old Magic cards. They're not over-designed. They just are impactful and iconic and will be around forever.
Yeah.
So, I think this sets a home run. It turns out if you just up the power super high, it paves over a lot of stuff, but it's hitting all of my fun centers in my brain.
Yeah, it's like not giving all the power to one person. It's like diversifying it. Everyone gets a little slice of the pie.
Yes. So thank you again, Kyle, for joining me to discuss yet another cool Magic set.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And listeners, again, if you want to write in, you can do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, and till next time, peace!